Check the control room. Okay, we are live.
All right.
Testing, testing. All right. I guess we'll give it one more minute since we said it was going to be a 1 p.m. start time. Yeah. Okay. So good afternoon. We are hopefully live on YouTube. My name is Mark Votman. I'm one of the co-founders of GovTribe, and I'm here today with Mark Rockefeller. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Mark Rockefeller, a co-founder and CEO of StreetShares. So we're one of the larger funders of veteran-owned businesses in the country.
Yeah. So we are, for the second time, trying out a live web stream, sort of looking at what's happening in the world of federal contracting. Today, we're going to talk about the Small Business Administration's task force on small business development, specifically focusing on veteran-owned businesses, which we often talk about with you guys. But you know, it's something that is probably of interest to any small business owner who's in federal contracting. Very quickly before we get into that, if you are watching this on YouTube, you'll notice that there is a chat to the right side of the video. You can feel free to use that to ask questions. We're going to take questions at the end. If anyone's watching this on the GovTribe blog, if you, in the bottom right corner of the video pane, click where it says YouTube, that'll open it up in YouTube where you can access the chat feature. So let's just go ahead and jump right in. Do you want to just start by talking about what the task force is and how you got involved with it?
Yeah. So the SBA has a couple of task forces focused on veterans entrepreneurship. And last year, I was invited to join as a member. And so when Mark and I talked about doing a webinar, the thought was that we would bring some of the insights and some of the things that we're learning from the task force to all of you. I would say that it's public, and it's supposed to be public. Mm-hmm. And so the transcript of the task force meetings are made public, but that takes about 90 days typically. Mm-hmm. We actually just had a meeting yesterday, and so we can report a bit on sort of what that meeting was all about. Mm-hmm. But the task force that I'm on is called the Interagency Task Force, mm-hmm. and it's focused on veterans small business development. Right. And so it consists of members of various federal agencies, mm-hmm. and then a handful of nonprofit organizations that are serving the veterans community. And so my seat, for example, is actually through our foundation, StreetShares Foundation, mm-hmm. That gives me a seat on that. It's a very good group. It's been around now for a couple of years. We meet 4 times a year. Mm-hmm. And it's a very good opportunity to hear directly from the agencies what they're thinking as it relates to contracting, specifically for the veteran-owned small business, the VOSB and the SDVOSB community.
So most of the participants in these meetings are on the agency side, not on the public side.
Yes. So we have representatives from the SBA Office of Small Business Development, the DoD, the Department of Labor, Treasury, VA, the GSA, OMB, and then there's 4 representatives from veteran service organizations or veteran-focused nonprofits that are on there right now. Mm-hmm. So we have the American Legion, we have Vietnam Veterans of America, StreetShares Foundation, that's our seat, and the Military Officers Association of America. So those are the current members.
So it's your job with the other veterans associations to petition these agencies to discuss with them the perspective of the veteran businesses.
That's
and
exactly
what
right.
They're looking for.
Yeah. So which is kind of a theme for us now, I think. I mean, we'll go through when it meets and how to find out when it's meeting. Yeah. One thing to know is if there are things that folks in the field want us to bring forth to the task force, please let us know.
Yeah. So this is why I wanted to talk to you about this today, because even if anyone's even heard of this agency, I know I had not heard of it before you told me about it. I doubt they know where to go for the materials. Right. And once they find the materials, which I was looking over, they're a little bit hard to parse to understand exactly what the what initiatives are underway as an output of these things. So I want to talk a little bit about that. And then yes, give the opportunity for GovTribe users and from people who are just interested, who came across this on social media, would like you to bring to the next task force meeting.
Yeah, it is public, it is transparent, it is meant to be.
Yeah.
And the more engagement that we have, from our viewers and listeners now into the task force, the better it's going to be.
Great.
And so I really hope to bring back from this, perhaps some very specific ideas or recommendations that I can sort of bring to the task force on behalf of our viewers now.
Yeah, and if anyone's watching this video as a recording after not live, you can continue to comment on it, and we will check those comments, and we're going to collate those and we'll put together something for you to take a look at for the next meeting. So just very quickly, it's probably a good idea to just sort of highlight what the task force's focus areas are. They list 5 of them really that are substantive. One is capital access, so access to small business loans, be they large loans or micro loans, whatever they need to compete or get started. Which I imagine is one of the things that you're most interested in, given your company's focus. The second is meeting SBA goals for set-asides, and that includes things like mentor protege and subcontracting, which all contributes to those small business goals that agencies have. For anyone who doesn't know, the Small Business Administration requires that each agency meet a certain percentage goal for total award value for all different set-asides. For service disabled veteran, it's 3% for just about every agency every year. The third is better integrity of the SDV, OSB, and VOSB set-asides, meaning that companies that get certified, that there's some really transparent, clear standard for being awarded that certification. The fourth is reducing the administrative barriers to business development and entrepreneurship, which I think is going to be a lot of probably the most interest to a lot of people watching this, like how to win new business. If you're getting started as a new veteran-owned businesses, like how do you break into the industry? And then better training and counseling is the fourth. And then they have sort of this, or sorry, the fifth, and then they have this sixth that's sort of like any other thing. So if your interest is not covered by one of those, you can still feel free to ask the question. So, there's a lot of things discussed in a lot of those. Some of them are a little wonky and probably more of interest to the agencies and the specifics of how the FAR is written, the Federal Acquisition Regulations. But there are a few things that were listed as recommendations for 2017 that came out of this task force. And I thought highlighting a few of those might be a good place to start.
Sure.
So one of the major recommendations that has come out of this task force so far, according to the documentation from the last meeting, was increasing growth opportunities for veteran-owned and service-disabled veteran-owned businesses, specifically access to capital. And the proposed solution to that was expanding the SBA microloan program. Can you talk a little bit about that, those efforts and how that was discussed?
So the much of the focus of the SBA right now is obviously on their backing of commercial loans. And most folks probably understand that the SBA isn't a direct lender, right? They simply back or guarantee loans that banks make. But the approval for those loans must still come from the bank. And if you talk to bankers about SBA lending, what they say in essence is it's one more thing that we've got to kind of check the box on. But they're going to make the loan based on their own decisioning criteria, their own credit policy, credit model, whatever it is. And then, if they can get sort of the SBA guarantee for that, that's certainly helpful. And so because the SBA views lending through the lens of bank lending, that tends to limit the kinds of loans that they do, right? Or that they're interested in, because as most folks know, banks have a very hard time making smallish loans. And let's define smallish as, less than 100K, less than 150, something like that. Because of the regulatory burdens that are put on banks, the effort and time and money that they've got to put into underwriting a loan, to underwrite a 50K loan is almost the same as a $5 million loan. Right. So banks just prefer the larger loans, right? Everyone knows that. It's more profitable for them. And so the SBA focus really to date has been on, SBA backed lending, which just by its nature means larger loans. And so there is an effort now to, focus a bit more on micro lending and smaller loans. There are some very good CDFIs, which are almost non-profit-y type, very small lenders out there. They're not small lenders. They make small loans that are excellent and very, very helpful. There's new kinds of lending that are being driven by technology, right? There's all kinds of lenders that are very fast, very efficient, and they do it online, right? Like StreetShares. And so the SBA is beginning to realize that there's a whole world of lending outside of the SBA bank lending paradigm. They have a program called Link, which is it's a tool that basically connects borrowers to various lenders, and it's a part of the SBA site. Actually, it's on there. That site, for example, right now, pretty much just has the large lenders on there, the bank lenders, right? So there's an effort to kind of get them to look at not the kinds of lenders that SBA is used to, but the kinds of lenders that folks are actually using, right? And there's a whole world of online
if they
lending.
Need smaller loans.
Exactly.
So there's not much the SBA can do to push banks to issue microloans.
That's right.
Because their role is just in certifying the borrower, right?
That's right. Yeah. So they will guarantee the bank loan, but it's still the bank making the credit decision, right? And so it's the bank's preferences, and of course they prefer the larger loans. So so there's an effort to see if you can sort of get lenders, get the SBA to focus on the smaller loan community, mostly because that's where a lot of the need is.
Right.
I'm not sure the size of the businesses that our listeners right now have. But in our space here at StreetShares, there's a lot of veteran-owned small businesses, both in government contracting and outside, that they just need 25K in working capital or 50K, right? It's a short need. It's a very immediate need. The time to go through the bank lending process isn't worth it for them, right?
Or for the bank.
Yeah. Well, or the borrower at this point, right? If it's going to take me 3 months to get a 25K loan, I mean, that's just silly, right? We're trying to get folks to kind of focus on the actual borrowing behavior that takes place, as opposed to the historical lending paradigm that the SBA is coming from, right? That has been in place for a while. So it's keeping up with technology, and it's keeping up with the actual behavior of borrowers.
So veteran businesses out there who are who would have a stake in this, who are interested in getting small business, smaller micro loans, but are having trouble doing it, outside of an SBA certification of the loan. What can they do? Just make their voices heard via the task force, or are there other things they can do?
Yeah, so one thing the task force does is puts together formal recommendations in a report and submits that annually.
Okay.
The recommendations in that report come from members of the task force, public. And so, I can say, here is what people need on the small loan side.
Right.
But frankly, it's much more powerful to have actual veteran-owned small businesses there, be a part of the meeting or call in and say, this has been my experience. I use banks for loans for, of these kinds or these size. If I need a small one, I go to, online lender A, B, or C, or I go to a CDFI or whatever it is. The closer that, we can sort of bridge that gap between the members of the task force and the SBA representatives who are there, who are very senior officials in the SBA, and the actual customers that they're serving, it's a great public opportunity. Right. For folks to call in and express their preferences, their concerns, make their own recommendations. It's meant to be public and transparent, but not many folks know about it, right? And so that's one thing that we're trying to solve here today is let folks know that it exists, and you really can be heard, and your recommendations can find their way into the report or the recommendations that the task force makes to the SBA, and you can actually impact, policy at that point.
Yeah. So another recommendation was around this sort of like job assistance, training, education on how the federal contracting business works and expanding that through the SBA. Some of this includes the mentor protege program and increasing awareness about that and how to participate and resources for it. And then there's other things like educating companies on how contracting officers identify veteran-owned businesses or other set-aside businesses, 8As or women-owned or whatever, and making it easier for them to make their existence of their business known to those contracting officers. So I understand a couple of things out of that. One of them being the new, what is it called, registry?
Yes, Certify.
Certify.gov.
Yeah. So, Certify.sba.gov. Yes.
Right. So can you tell us how that came about and what that now provides?
Yeah. One of the neat things that you get sort of either being on the task force or just participating in the public calls that we have. So every meeting is public. You can call into a general conference line and participate.
Right.
In real time. It's very helpful because you get these little bits of information because each of the agencies represented speaks for a few minutes and gives an update on their initiatives, the current status of those things, what they're trying to do, et cetera. At yesterday's meeting, we talked about the certified.sba.gov, which is like a one-stop shop for small businesses at SBA in terms of certification. Importantly, it includes certification for women-owned small businesses, what are called EDWOSBs, economically disadvantaged women-owned small businesses.
Right.
It's the gateway for the all small business mentor protege program, and it's the initial gateway for all 8A applications. Those things have now been rolled into this one portal called certify.sba.gov. Veteran owned, right? So our CVE, Certified Veteran Enterprise, that is still done through VA, not through SBA, which is an issue.
Which is another thing I'm going to get to here.
There's a bit of a discussion about where that should be, right? But the certified.sba.gov, they said yesterday that they have certified now, like through the mentor protege side, 372 approved participants, and like that is now the gateway. This now certified.sba.gov.
Right.
It's newish. They were very, very proud of it, and I actually personally tested it out yesterday. Went through the whole application process and all that. It was very easy. It was very fluid. So it's a good example of here's a tool that they're working hard to create, and unless people know about it by being a part of these meetings, it's not going to be used. Anyway, so certified.sba.gov is now out there, and from all accounts, it looks to be pretty good. Yeah,
and it's certainly, so from my perspective, and I don't know, maybe our users, companies out there are actually bidding on work and can talk a little bit about this or give us some feedback on it. But it seems like that solves, one of the two major parts of winning new business as a veteran-owned or women-owned or whatever business is, getting yourself certified and registering to make sure that contracting officers, when they're looking for a company that is a veteran-owned who has these NAICS codes, with these other certifications or whatever, that they have a place to go and there's a central place and it's all formatted the same way, which is great. But that doesn't solve the problem of how those companies can identify the opportunities, which brings to a couple of the other recommendations that were made by the task force. One of them is, what are they going to do about barriers to entry, which I'll get back to in a second, and then centralizing information on set-aside opportunities, specifically veteran-owned and other, service-disabled veteran-owned. But, anyone who's competed in this space knows that despite the fact that there is FBO.gov, that especially when you're looking for set-aside opportunities where there's a lot of sole source things or where there's a lot that happens prior to it going live on FBO, it continues to matter that you know the contracting officers personally, that you are on a list on someone's desk and you're getting the email that gives you a heads up that something's coming down the pike. It goes up on FBO with an award decision that happens a week or two later, unless you got advance warning. So the recommendation out of this, the recommendation here cites that the agencies claim that FBO is now widely used for these things, but that they're encouraged to continue this coordination and consolidation, which I think is needed. I'm wondering if there was much discussion about that at the last meeting, or if that's something where it seems like it's more of a culture change than a technology change because the site exists.
Yeah. After the last meeting, I spoke with Barb Carson, who is the senior official for veterans initiatives at the SBA. And we spoke about this very thing. And she said that, SDVOSBs are growing in their share of contract awards year over year. For fiscal year 2016, they were actually awarded 3.98, almost 4%. So above the 3% goal, being the goal. That number may not be official, but it's public because it was mentioned at the meeting yesterday. But that a few challenges remain. And one of those challenges, she said, was that SDVOSB sole source authority is just not widely used by contracting officers.
That's true. Right? The SDVOSB sole source is not leveraged as much as I think a lot of veteran businesses think it's going to be when they get into business. Right.
Which is really unfortunate, right? It's
fortunate and unfortunate. I mean,
as a veteran advocate, I would like to see the number be higher than 3% and it be, strongly utilized.
I think having veteran-owned set-aside, competitive set-asides is both better for encouraging participation, and it encourages public posting of the solicitation data, which is helpful for the entire market. So I agree with you that the FAR allows for quite broad authority for SDVOSB set aside or sole source, and it's not used very often. Right.
She said that that there's other examples like the simplified acquisition threshold and the micro purchase limit. They were raised in the NDAA that was signed 2 days ago. Right. But there's a concern that there's not measures in place to track, what proportion of those are going to small businesses, right? So it's a typical government thing, right? Where you have some legislation that implements something that means well. But then how do you actually follow through and make sure that the literal execution of that and the tracking of that and the measurement is completed, right? Anyway, if folks participate in the meetings, right, they can get the updates and they can also speak out with their anecdote or their example. And I do think that if we heard at the meetings, more folks saying, the SDVOSB opportunity should be placed here, or they should be here, or I didn't even know about this thing until after the fact when I could have been,
or that when they are placed somewhere, they're always placed somewhere in the same way. If anyone is on GovTribe or searching for opportunities on another site, if you're looking in opportunities, which are projects on GovTribe, if you're looking at special notices, opportunity type special notice, what you will see a lot is something that is, it'll come out as a special notice and it'll be sort of subtitled as an intent to sole source award. And that's how these things are when they are put out with any warning. That's how they come out. It'll say, XYZ agency is intending to sole source award this to this company using the SDVOSB sole source or another sole source option. And then the public has 2 weeks to comment or something. Basically, you provide your capability statement to make the argument that it should instead be a competitive award as opposed to a sole source award. So that's good. And I have been seeing that with more frequency, but I continue to get the feedback from our small business and veteran-owned users that it's still difficult to identify these opportunities. That it's still very much a networking game.
And this meeting is a great place for that opinion to be voiced to the people who have the ability to make a difference.
I totally agree.
So they can do that through me. I enjoy talking to you because I learn a lot that then I can take to the committee. Right? They can call into the committee directly and voice it themselves. The more of the voice of the public of the SDVOSB, VOSB contracting small business community that we can bring into that meeting, the better it's going to be.
Right. So the last thing, and I think this is a related issue, is reducing other barriers to entry. And these are things like contract bundling. the increased use of IDIQ contracts, which is related to contract bundling.
Yeah.
Contract bundling typically refers to the services under a contract. So whereas I think the most common example you hear is, let's say you're a company that has landscaping contracts and you're doing a good job at Fort Myer doing landscaping. And then you're coming up at the end of your contract and it's going to be recompeted. And now it's going to be a sort of combined facility services contract, landscaping plus janitorial plus data warehousing or whatever, and you only do landscaping, which makes you no longer, unless you go out and find a partner that does those other things, you now are not really capable of competing. Yeah. So that's contract bundling. There are, from what I understand, already mechanisms in place for you to protest the way something's being bundled as being anti-competition. I imagine a lot of people don't know how to do that, but it is possible. And certainly if you're, a lot of companies who do just landscaping don't have a dedicated BD or contracts person who can go out and spend time on something like that. So there's that issue. There's the increased use of IDIQ contracts, which are, not only is it a full facility services contract, but it's a 10-year contract under which you can get task orders for 10 years, which makes it difficult to break into a market, which compounds the problem of entrenchment, which means, is one vendor continually getting the same thing over and over again. How is this discussed at the meeting? Yeah,
unfortunately, my answer is going to be fairly unsatisfying, right? It was raised as an issue.
Yeah.
It was raised as it is clearly a threat to small businesses, right? The more bundling that occurs,
the higher up the ladder of the type of business that can compete.
Absolutely. So it was raised as an issue. It was acknowledged as a threat to small business owners. And it's something that members of the committee said they're working on, but there was not, at least that I heard, particular solutions. If there are solutions out there, ideas that folks have, I would love to take those to the committee. But I wish that I could tell you exactly what the status was, or there's XYZ solution in play. It was acknowledged as a problem, and that's about where it ended.
So the one solution proposed in, I guess, the document after the last meeting was looking into developing an 8A-like program specifically for these other set-asides, starting with veteran-owned or service-disabled veteran-owned, which I could see that, because what that allows is a much faster procurement process. Like, that's the biggest thing about 8A is like the process going from like writing a requirement to awarding a contract is shrunk down by, to a quarter. Which makes it, there's less friction with doing more tightly scoped contracts if you can execute them quickly. The reason contracting officers tend to move toward bundling is because the procurement process for even set-aside contracts is so long that you don't want to have to do that 4 times to cover all the facility services at one installation. You want to do it once. So that would certainly help. That would create other problems, of course, because now you're adding more administrative burden, because that's another program you have to sign up for. So I
think that was from our meeting probably 2 quarters ago, I think. Right. And I didn't hear that discussed in yesterday's meeting. It may have come up and I missed it.
Right.
I didn't hear it discussed. I would love feedback on that, right? On that idea, so that in any kind of meeting, there tends to be ideas for solutions, but not a lot of specificity around how to actually do it, right? So the more specific that we can get in recommendations and ideas that we can pass on through the committee, the better. So perhaps we should, follow up, look at exactly that particular idea, try and flesh that out a little bit, and see if we can't provide some more information.
Okay. So we're coming up near the end of our half hour here. If anyone has any questions, just getting some sort of feedback that this task force seems valuable. So that's good. I don't see any direct questions.
I can share a few more sort of data points and trends that came from the latest meeting while folks
give
are
people time to write down some questions if they have them.
A couple things that I learned yesterday.
Just one second, just in case anyone missed the beginning. If you are watching this on YouTube, you can just use the chat that's just to the right of the video screen. If you're watching this on the GovTribe blog, on the bottom right corner of the window of the pane, click YouTube. That'll take you to YouTube, where you can add comments.
Perfect. They talked about the NVSBE, the National Veteran Small Business Engagement Conference,
Okay.
which was last week in St. Louis. It's around the same time every year, early December. Has been in St. Louis for at least the last 2 years, I think. And that there was 1.5 billion awarded to by VA to firms that attended the last 2 of those conferences.
Oh, wow.
And so my takeaway from that
was a correlation or causation?
Exactly right. Yeah. If you want to work with VA in particular, right? Yeah. The point of these of this conference is to get the smaller vendors in front of the government reps, right? But it did sound to me like there was at least a correlation.
Yeah.
That attending that, specifically if you want to work with VA, has been fruitful for folks, at least in the last couple of years. So that was a nice data point. We got some numbers around the mentor protege program. Again, 372 folks that were approved, 71 that were not approved. They said most of that was for incomplete paperwork. So it seems like if you've got your paperwork together, the odds of being selected are quite high. I mentioned the 3.98 for SDVOSBs for fiscal year 2016. We talked a little bit 2 meetings ago, I believe, about the National Ombudsman Program. And I'm not sure if folks know what that is, but it's basically a program for small businesses to sort of file a confidential complaint that is handled confidentially and neutrally to the SBA if they are faced with excessive regulatory interference in their business.
Okay.
So it's an office, it's a tool that was out there. I wasn't aware of it until I heard about it at this meeting. But it's called the SBA National Ombudsman Program. I'm just reading here from some of my notes here. Help small businesses when they experience excessive or unfair federal regulatory enforcement actions, such as audits, investigations, excessive fines, penalties, threats, retaliation, that kind of thing. So it's simply a resource. It is confidential. They say they are neutral and independent as well. So that's a new resource that I think not many folks are aware of. The SBA.
And this is open to any small business?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be curious to find out what sort of regulatory burdens are often experienced by some of these small businesses,
and what the result
is required. Yeah.
Right. But it is a resource, and they were very proud to talk about it. So
that reminds me of one other issue that I did want to mention, which is in talking about increasing these growth opportunities and reducing the friction with getting started in the business, the sort of split for the certification for veteran-owned versus all the other set-asides, how the CVE, the Certified Veteran Enterprise, is all done through VA, and all the other certifications are done through SBA. And because of that, I guess the veteran-owned can't be done through this new certified at SBA.gov.
That's correct.
What is the proposed solution? I certainly understand the logic for having the VA be responsible for the CVE certification.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit more consumer friendly as far as reducing friction to have it all done through one site, have it all under one organization.
There's a history to this that you have 2 agencies both trying to do right by veterans, and both wanting to be the certification authority. That's the bottom line. And I think this goes back for a while, and I'm sure there's folks fall on one side or the other of the debate. The SBA did say that they're very keen to bring it over to the SBA side. I frankly don't know exactly what the justification is for having it, on the VA side versus the SBA side. Certainly, data accessibility, being able to certify that one's served and for how long and all of that. That kind of data should be available to both sides. Should be. Yeah. But yeah, there's a history there of folks trying to figure out where this decision making, certification ability should reside, and the SBA is keen to bring it over to their side. It would certainly work nicely with certified.sba.gov,
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's arguments why the VA would rather keep it over there.
So that's another thing for anyone out there who is both a veteran-owned business and has gone for another certification, be it women-owned or HubZone or 8A or whatever. If you want to tell us about your experience in having to do the two separate certifications, one through SBA, one through veteran.
Yeah.
But I think that'd be useful feedback.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
But I guess we'll just call it there. If anyone has any follow-up, again, you can continue to use the comments on the video on YouTube if you like. You can also comment on the Facebook pages. So both of us promoted this on Facebook. You can start a comment thread under each of those, or you can email me at marc, M-A-R-C, @govtribe.com. And is there a mailbox that they could use for?
Yeah, I'm Mark, M-A-R-K, at StreetShares.com. And I think we would, both Marks here would love to get your feedback, get, the more data from the field that we can take to this, this task force, the better. I mean, they are tasked with improving, this process for all of you. And, one of my goals is to sort of bridge the gap between, the STVOSBs and VOSBs in the field with this task force, whenever possible. So if I can be a conduit for that information, I'd be honored to do so.
Great. Well, thanks very much. And thank you all for joining.
All right. Thanks.